Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Premier Chels, your source for all things Premier League, but starting with Chelsea first. Coming to you on your speakers and headsets. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Jackie from Houston. I have Rahul here from Connecticut. Rahul, welcome back. And actually, I have a very, very special guest from Miami, Florida, Christian Ortiz. Christian is the founder of Kickoff Coffee and a massive Newcastle fan, and ironically, Atletico Madrid as well. Welcome, Christian. I'm happy to have you here.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys. I'm super excited to be here with Premier Chels, a fan of what you guys are doing. Honored to partner up with you guys last season and this season as well. So finally here with you guys to share a few moments and talk a little bit about Chelsea and the exciting season coming up.
Kind words, really appreciate it. But before Chelsea and the season coming up, can you tell us a little bit about Kickoff and a little bit about you as well?
Sure. Well, Kickoff Coffee is a company that celebrates top quality coffee, specialty coffee through the eyes of football. So about 8 months ago, two co-founders and myself, my sister, Melissa Ortiz, and my now wife, Rasha Kumsiye, we came together to launch this coffee company. And we wanted to really dedicate a company in a space that could highlight the beautiful game, football. So we've now launched our online store. We've launched 3 bags of different coffees. I know you guys have doing an amazing job helping us get the word out, sharing our coffees with your community. We really appreciate that, and we're working hard to launch our next line of 3. So it's been nonstop, but we're super excited for this season coming up and some of the things we have in store.
Yeah, honestly, it's been a wonderful journey to go on with you guys. And I love that you said eyes of football, because even everything from the packaging to where you guys are getting this from and even giving back to the community. You want to tell us a little bit about that as well?
Sure. Yeah. Like I said, we launched an initial line of 3 bags of coffee, each coming from different parts of the coffee world. And what we've been able to do is set up and dedicate each bag that gives back a portion, in this case, 10% to soccer organizations or community organizations that use soccer to make an impact in the community. And so, for example, our very first bag, it's called the Playmaker. We sourced this coffee from Huila, Colombia. And so for the Playmaker bag, 10% of all proceeds goes back to this organization called Tiempo de Juego, which is located in Colombia and that are working in underserved communities through the game of soccer. So, not only we are, about really connecting our community with top quality coffees, but we're working hard to really help and support these wonderful organizations that are using these innovative game methods to help community in its development. So,
yeah, what a wonderful mission. And we here at the Premier Chelsea team not only love your coffee, we love the mission. And being Chelsea fans, maybe you'll find the next Radamel Falcao for us, and then we can get a striker back in our team here, or maybe Atletico Madrid. I don't know. We'll find out here in the next few years. We'll see. So that's great. Thank you again for being on here. Rahul, do you want to get jumped into some of the exciting content we have today?
Yes, let's do that. So before we do that, I do want to share my Kickoff Coffee mug here. So it's not just coffee, but it's also some cool merchandise. So definitely check it out, guys. But let's jump into the Premier League. Transfer rumors. I beg your pardon, Jackie. So just a couple of quick ones on Chelsea outgoings. Zappacosta has left for Italy. He joins Atalanta on a permanent deal. Ike Ugbo joins Genk in Belgium on a permanent deal as well. And then the rumors are Kurt Zouma is heading to West Ham, which would open the door for Jules Koundé to join Chelsea. So about a week left here of the transfer window, but Chelsea is still slowly making some moves, mainly outgoings, but a couple of incomings. And one such incoming is Saul from Christian's Atletico Madrid that has been linked with Chelsea. So we figured we'd have Christian obviously talking about Kickoff Coffee, but also sharing with us what Saul brings to Chelsea and his time at Atletico Madrid. So we'll start with you, Christian. Saul, midfield, but joining Chelsea. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I'd hate to see him leave. That's my opinion as an Atleti supporter. I've seen Saul grow over the years with the enormous growth that Atletico has experienced over the last 10 years or whatnot. And Saul is an extremely talented player. I think he carries the precise qualities to thrive in a league like the Premier League. I love his style of play. He's he can be very technical, but also very simple. He's really good at distributing. His tempo, his work rate, everything is on par for, I think, a go in the Premier League. Like I say, I hate to see him go because he had just signed a new deal not too long ago. Long-term deal with Atleti. But times are changing at Atletico very quickly, and so he may feel like he is ready for a new experience, a new opportunity, and a new league. So yeah, let's see what happens. I don't know if there's any more specific questions about him in his role on the field, or
what's interesting, I think, is that he's got that type of, I think you described it well. He can fit in technically, but he can also play the simple pass. And I'm almost wondering with a Chelsea team, maybe we need someone like that, because we do have a Jorginho who's kind of a playmaker, a little bit slower, a Kante who's a destructive midfielder, maybe somebody a little bit different. And it looks like he'll fit that mold. Now, one thing I want to touch on, I think that the relationship between Chelsea and Atletico Madrid, especially when it comes to transfers of players, has been pretty healthy over the last 5-6 years here. Diego Costa has come and went back. Felipe Luis came and then also went back. So you've got good relationship there. So do you expect that Saul stretches his legs a little bit and I may come back in the future? Or is this one where if he goes, you guys are going to use that money and maybe invest it somewhere else in the team?
Yes, it is a weird moment, I think, in his career. He's like 26 years old,
right.
And like I said, he's recently gone through like an up and down moment at Atleti, but he's extremely talented, and at this moment in the world economy that I guess we're living in, I was telling Raul before that it's bizarre to me that at that age, like, he would be looking for a loan spell, at least at first, right, with an option to stay. But it could be one of two things, I think, like a breath of fresh air where he goes out, spends a season in the Premier League where he kind of finds himself again to return, as we've seen Diego Costa and, some other Atleti transfers to Chelsea. And I would be really happy if he were to come back with a new breath for, the game and, his role at the club. And if he, if Chelsea does, let's say he does make the move and Chelsea chooses to bring him on permanently, I think that, he'll have a great impact at Chelsea. Like you said, he can fill in many roles. He can play defensive mid, and we've even used him. We've even placed him at left back. So he can play on the wing as well. So like, there's so many exciting options to play Saul at. So I think that it would be a great addition for Chelsea.
Yeah, that'd be definitely exciting, and then we'll see how things play out over the next few weeks here, whether it gets into a loan and then buy in 1 year, or he gets his experience and comes back to Atletico and says, I'm happy being in the Madrid area, and then we kind of go from there. Rahul, do you have any more you want to talk us through?
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, there's a week left, but there's a lot of activity happening. And Christian and I were talking about the transfer window, and it's probably the craziest in the history of transfer windows, because we still have the potential of Mbappe moving to Madrid, Ronaldo moving to PSG or Manchester City, Lewandowski moving to PSG. And if all that wasn't enough, the saga of the summer, Harry Kane, could still end up at City within the next week or so. So it's just mind-blowing, the deals that are happening. And just to think about the deals that have already happened, we were talking about Lukaku, but you think about Messi leaving, you think about Ramos leaving. It's just crazy. And Atleti themselves have made some good moves. And I think for the next season, it's going to be a whole different ball game in terms of where players are, but it's going to be entertaining all over.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a lot of wild parts happening there. I'll ask you on one question here, Christian. Mbappe to Madrid. How do you feel about who's potentially a top class, world class player going to a rival here?
I'm Colombian American, so we all witnessed James and his career taking that path towards Real Madrid. I'd advise him to stay away. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Fair enough. I think that's good advice there. And one thing that's interesting, Rahul, is Mbappe's contract is actually up at the end of next season. So from my perspective, 160 odd million being called for a player that could potentially be free next year and supposedly has his heart going on Madrid anyway. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I was reading that, and it's interesting that they were saying that's Madrid's way of showing how strongly they feel about him. And I'm like, isn't this the Madrid that was pushing for the Super League because they didn't have money? And all of a sudden they're about to drop that kind of money on a player that could they essentially sign for them in 6 months for free, like you said. So I guess it comes down to if Madrid want him, they're going to find the money from somewhere and get him. And he wants to go. It's a dream for him, like we've seen being reported. And if it's not this summer, it's definitely next summer. And I know Christian said stay away, but it's weird. Whenever Madrid come calling for a player, that player just wants to go regardless of what has happened in the past.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. And if that happens, like you said, it might be one of the craziest transfer windows we've all seen in a very, very long time, if not the craziest ever. So we'll all be watching and we'll stay tuned and give updates as and when they come. But if you want to jump into match week 2, Rahul.
Yeah, let's do that. So Premier League, been back already 2 weeks. It feels like, it just started this weekend, but it's been the second week. And some teams kind of already started on a good path, Liverpool being one of them, a second win for them against Burnley, and cruise control, and they're looking good with their players back. Van Dijk's back, and Salah and Jota and Mane doing their piece up front, so they seem to be looking good. Brighton themselves are looking good. You, me, and Alex, Jackie had picked them to go down, and they've come up, and I believe they sit in 4th, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. Impressive.
And Man City back to their winning ways. Christian and I were talking about Jack Grealish before the podcast started, and he gets his goal, and that's another player that's moved this summer for big money. So some of these signings coming through, and we'll talk about our guy Lukaku in a second here, but Leeds and Everton put on a great show, 2-2, an entertaining game. I'm not sure if you guys watched it, but Leeds and Everton, in terms of entertainment, I think that was the best game this weekend.
Right. Yeah, and just a quick question for Christian here. I know you talked about James Rodriguez. There were quotes coming out that he had moved or had put his career coming to Everton because he wanted to play with Ancelotti. And, he did have a pretty good season in Everton coming to England for the first time, really performed. I think it was one of their standout performers. He did struggle a little bit with injuries here and there. Yeah. But do you think he stays at Everton and he can work under the new coach, or do you think he's going to try and find a way out now?
That's a great question. I was really happy to see him move to the Premier League. I remember watching him when he was in the youth national teams in Colombia, and I was just, from the get-go knew that he had a natural ability to be in the Premier League, and his style, his way of play, his quick decision-making, his flair, it sets up perfect for the Premier League. So regardless of whether he stays at Everton or not, I don't see why he can't. But regardless, I hope he stays in the Premier League.
Yeah, he's definitely a talent that we all like to see in the Premier League. He's put on some amazing goals and some amazing performances. So hopefully he stays and can help them be, I don't know, Rahul, maybe a dark horse over here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everton under Benitez too now. So
yeah.
One good manager to another one. I think James will definitely benefit from playing there, and he has a good team around him, especially in front of him with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who can convert the chances that James would provide. But another game that Christian is kind of closely linked with is Villa versus Newcastle, and unfortunately Newcastle lost the game. But Danny Ings, man, that was some goal.
That was one hell of a goal, yeah. No, but let's talk a little bit about Newcastle, Christian. What are your thoughts on them this season? What are your thoughts on the manager? Because I've heard a lot of things about Steve Bruce going into last season. Newcastle didn't necessarily play the best football, but they managed to survive, and they did have a few games here and there. Thoughts on the manager, thoughts on them, maybe where they'll end up this season?
It's a very frustrating situation at the club right now at Newcastle. When Steve Bruce was named coach, nobody wanted it to happen, but I was one of the few, or one of the fans that kind of wanted to at least give him an opportunity to see how it goes. I think we all got to a point where we were ready to have a change.
Right.
Towards the end of the season, we were at the bottom of the table, fighting relegation, scrapping through a really unhealthy roster. These are all things that reflect, I think, the legacy that he's left as a coach at different clubs that he's had the opportunity to coach at. And unfortunately, like, he seems like a great guy, like a nice guy. You want to give him a chance, but it's like, it's not happening. And again, this transfer season is another demonstration of how unorganized things are at Newcastle right now. And it's a heartbreaker. And we're just hoping that if we can stay healthy, we have enough to kind of finish more or less in the same place as we did last season. Hopefully not get pulled down into a relegation battle. But as we've seen, the slow start for us, apart from the first half against West Ham in the first leg, and again, nothing, coming away with nothing at Aston Villa. So it's pretty frustrating for us right now.
Yeah. Do you think they need some fresh management? Not necessarily at the manager level. When I say management, we've talked about, Roland and I have talked about this at other big clubs, and Newcastle, make no mistake, is a big club with a lot of legacy. Roland and I watched them growing up with the likes of Alan Shearer, who I know that you dearly, dearly adore. We looked at Shola Amiobi, and later on, Rahul, I think it was Papi Cisse with one of those incredible goals against Chelsea. But we talk about management at the high level, which is recruiting, staffing the club correctly, or not just recruiting because one manager wants something. What is the style of football Newcastle want to do overall as they go through? Do you think they need to change up high?
Yeah, I think that it definitely needs a change from above. The fans are there week in, week out. No matter where Newcastle has been, we've gone down a few times to Championship. We've come right back up. Fans, no question about it, they're there supporting. So the question is where the ownership is and where are they at and why are they, everybody knows. And we're just waiting for the day. We're praying for the day that we can change that situation. And we had, the media likes to play with our hearts a little, but we've gotten close to a takeover, and that seems to still be in the legal field. But yeah, we're ready for a change in a new era at Newcastle. And but given the reality, what we do expect from the players is another thing. So no matter who owns the club or who's recruited or what starting 11 is out there week in, week out, they should be wearing the Newcastle top with the same amount of love that the fans are bringing to the stadium, or before, during the pandemic, from afar.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I know one player you guys picked up this transfer window was Joe Willock. He looked very, very fresh for you guys last year when he came on loan, and hopefully he can continue and pick up where he left off.
Really happy about him staying. He came in and made a huge impact. We could pretty much thank him for keeping us afloat. But here we are, transfer season, about to end, and he's the only deal we've made. And so what changes from last season? So we've brought back a player that we had on loan who made an amazing impact. We're excited and delighted to have him. But at the same time, apart from Willock, we've lost players. Players have been released or sold, and we're waiting to see what else Steve Bruce has in the works. He says that there may be a loan in the works, but let's last minute deals again. It shows the disregard and the the disorganization at the club.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, last question for Newcastle, Rahul, before I let you come back in. Sorry, I know we're hanging up on Newcastle, but it's a good conversation here. Callum Wilson seemed to be an excellent player for you guys last season till he got injured. And Newcastle looked like a completely different team without him. He's back now, fit. Hopefully, he scored in the first game. Hopefully, he can get back to scoring ways. And I think he may be a big difference to the Newcastle side this year. Maybe almost like a new signing, hopefully.
Yep, he's actually got a new number on his
Yeah.
back. So he's actually wearing the number 9 this season, which is a huge responsibility at the club. And he's already coming out, swinging pretty hard and showing that he's up to the task. He says that he has some ambitious goals for his goal tally. So he's absolutely amazing to watch, and love his work rate and everything that he's trying to bring to the club. So love it.
Yep. Absolutely exciting. Rahul, if you want to take us on from there.
Yes, no, that was a great discussion. And another player we spoke about, Christian and I, before you jumped on, was Saint Maximin, who's again, he was injured too last season, but at least in the first game and even a little bit in the Villa game, looked like he could be that spark that Newcastle need in games when things aren't going their way. And so with him, Callum Wilson, Almiron, who moved from MLS, I think there is some good talent there.
Yeah.
Like maybe Christian was saying, maybe a different manager would get more out of them. But Newcastle are never shy of making the managerial change. So if things are getting a little rough, maybe that will come through. Not asking for it, just kind of going down what has happened in history. But moving on to a different team, and West Ham were kind of maybe in a similar situation as Newcastle a few seasons ago in terms of bottom half and trying to stay in the league. But this season, and even last season actually, has been a whole different new West Ham. David Moyes doing what we thought he would do at Manchester United, doing it at West Ham, and they currently sit top of the table after beating Leicester City 4-1. Jackie, I'm sure you were surprised by that, but I'm sure Christian was even more surprised by seeing West Ham end the week top of the table.
Yeah, I'll go real quick on that one. I didn't pick West Ham to beat Leicester, at least in that fashion. I know they have a good squad. I know that the manager has done a really good job last year, but Leicester also were no small team and no small club to mess around with last season. So I think the fashion in which they did it and the comfort level in which they were able to score those goals was kind of an eye-opener to maybe pay attention to West Ham. Maybe they're not going to compete for the league necessarily. I don't think they have enough in the tank for that. But in and around that top 4 position, I think West Ham may be trying again. I don't know. Christian, your thoughts on them?
I agree with you, man. I think that they had a pretty good season last season, and they were in that fight, that final race to make it to the top 4 or 6. I don't remember precisely, but I'm a fan of Moyes. I think that he does a great job, and he's worked with what the players that he's had, and he seems like he's gotten a good group together there.
Yeah, definitely he does. And if Rahul, if you're correct, they're going to make some couple more signings, maybe Big Kurt from Chelsea to West Ham. They could strengthen even further here.
They could, and they have to, because they're in Europa League. And typically what we've seen with teams that make it into Europa League that have traditionally not played in Europe is they start slipping down. But West Ham has started like a house on fire. And I'm sure with the additions like Zuma and maybe a couple more, they would definitely be up there. So a team to watch out for. And I think we didn't even pick them to make it into the top 6. So we might have to reevaluate our choices. But a team that we did pick to kind of make it into the top 4 is Manchester United. And they started off excellently in that first week against Leeds, but kind of back down to earth in the second week, a 1-1 draw against Southampton. Jackie, I'll get your thoughts, and then we'll kind of wrap up this part of the episode with Christian.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was a shocker by any means necessarily, because I think the theme of last season, and we've said this on the show many times, is the Premier League is such an amazing league that anybody can beat anybody. I think it was more startling because Man United seemed to have signed all the right players and have got all the right parts now. And so on paper, they should be able to beat a Southampton team. So we have to watch this one a little bit closely, because it's going to go back to the age-old debate: is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer the right man to lead them to that next layer, which is title challenge and then championships and wins like that? So we'll be watching them. It was a little bit of a surprising one, but again, never shocking in the Premier League.
Yeah, you're spot on. Christian, your thoughts on Manchester United and Southampton?
I think you guys nailed it. I think that they're going to be fighting there, the top positions, the league. I think that coming off of last season, finishing second, and then coming into this season, looking to build off of that, it's make it or break it, I think, for Solskjaer, right? And so I did see the Southampton Man U match, and Southampton did a great job. Che Adams had a great goal. I know that it was like an unfortunate deflection, but it was a great setup by Armstrong, who actually comes from Newcastle. But yeah, it was a great match to watch, and I think that it's going to be an interesting season for them. So
yeah, absolutely. So before we jump into and kind of analyze the Chelsea Arsenal game a little further, we wanted to thank Christian for joining us today. I know you said you had a little bit of time, so it was great to have you on finally and talk about Kickoff Coffee, which again is a great, not only great coffee, but giving back to the community, like you mentioned. And we have partnered up with you. If you're not aware of it already, then it is an official partnership, and we have a code TP Coffee 15 for 15% off. So check it out. It's www.kickoffcoffeecode.com. And it's also applicable, that code's also applicable to the merchandise, as I mentioned earlier. So definitely some great stuff. And if you're asking for my personal favorite, it's the match day. So grab yourself a bag and let us know, and let Christian know, your feedback, because they're always willing to work with you and bring out, like he said, 3 new bags. So we're looking forward to it, Christian. Thank you very much for joining us. And we'll hope to have you back in the very near future.
Always a pleasure, guys, and an honor to work with you guys. And cheers to all the work you guys are doing, Premier Chels. Wishing you the best, except when you guys play Newcastle and Atleti.
There you go. Thanks, Christian.
All right, good luck,
Thanks,
guys.
Christian. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Bye. All right, Rahul. Now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this game.
Yes, sir. So I missed the last episode, but you, Alex, and Will did a great job talking about Arsenal and Chelsea, and we won the game. That's all that matters. But let's deep dive into it and talk about the starting 11. Lukaku making his debut, and the overall choices that Tuchel made for his second game in this season. So you want to run us through the starting 11?
Yeah, absolutely. Mendy in goal. I think that initially we talked about Kepa having a chance, but Mendy has started solid, and maybe he'll keep his spot. We'll see when the African Cup of Nations come around if Kepa can really push for that. Rudiger, Christensen back in the middle. Cesar Azpilicueta taking that right central back position. A lot of talk about Chalobah, but I think when you've got your senior squad fit and ready to go, and for those who are big Chalobah fans, I think don't worry about it. We have a lot of football to play this year, so we may see the young man yet get some games here and there. In the midfield, or that midfield 4 that we traditionally play, Marcos Alonso keeps his space at left wing back. I see you smiling there, Rahul. I'll get your thoughts on him. Jorginho and Kovacic continue in the middle. Reece James at right wing back. In the front, we've got Kai Havertz and Mason Mount almost playing as inside kind of wingers, not necessarily hugging the touchline, with Romelu Lukaku leading the line. And I'm going to save my comments on Lukaku after I get you to speak for a few minutes, Rahul.
Yeah, no, a strong lineup, and I guess the touching point here is Marcos Alonso, who continues to play, and rightly so. He hasn't done anything wrong. He's been fit. He's been the one that's been there through preseason. A lot of our listeners had reached out on Instagram and had said, "What's going on with Chilwell? Why isn't he playing?" And he is back. He is part of the squad. He was on the bench, but like we said on our Instagram, he hadn't played since the Champions League final. He did go to the England team squad for the Euros, but he didn't play a single minute. He then went on holiday, which was kind of mid-July, came back and has been, working his way back to fitness. But for him to be thrown into this game would have been a little too early. So I think Marcos Alonso was the right choice, and he did a decent job with, against a pacey winger in Pepe. I think he did a good job.
About Marcos Alonso, what's interesting is I love Ben Chilwell. I think Ben Chilwell is probably one of the best left backs in the Premier League, but Marcos Alonso is not bad at all at left wing back. And I think that's what makes the big distinction. When you put Marcos Alonso at a left wing back position, it's almost like that position was made for that gentleman. I think he just loves it. He loves bombing forward. He doesn't necessarily have to worry so much about the defensive side of the game, which is where we've always called out his weaknesses. But in this particular formation, when you've got Mason Mount and Kai Havertz playing as those inside wingers, Alonso has a lot of space to go up and down and really make use of that space.
He did, and most of our attacks were, whenever we were attacking, Alonso was right there. So like you said, he enjoys that side of the game. but even the defensive side, he doesn't sacrifice it just because he likes attacking. And that's, I think, has been a tweak or a change in his style under Tuchel. Is he knows he can attack, but he knows I got to do my defensive work to keep my spot in this squad. And it's a great option. We've now moved Emerson on, so Alonso is, I guess, your quote unquote backup, but not really because he's the starting choice right now. And he's a good option to have in the squad because he's always going to pop up with goals too when you need them.
Yeah, and fair play to Tuchel, Rahul. I think that it's important that if a player is performing well, even if on paper Ben Chilwell is your starting left back, if the gentleman that's pushing for the position is doing well, he has to be rewarded till you see him not necessarily play the way he's supposed to, and then you can give Chilwell his chance in the team. But fair play to Tuchel on that one.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Thiago Silva is another one that maybe raises a couple of questions as to why he hasn't played yet. But you've got to remember he played a full season with Chelsea, went away and played Copa America with Brazil, and he's now working his way back into fitness. I think I read somewhere he did cut short his holiday, which credit to him. And I think he will be back, and he's another great option to have in the squad. So, but his substitute, or I guess the guy who fills in this position, Christensen, has been very good too. So it's kind of a situation where we have a lot of good players and everyone's performing so far. It's been 2 games and we don't want to get carried away, but everyone's doing what they're supposed to. I guess the midfield position is where we need a little bit of strengthening, and that's why Saul's coming in. But what did you make of Jorginho and Kovacic?
I thought they did okay, to be honest with you. I think one thing about Kovacic really is he brings a lot of energy, which I've always said. He's able to kind of close down balls, and he does very good tackling, spreads the play. Jorginho, we know what Jorginho brings to the team. He controls that midfield, looks around for a pass and lays it off. So he's not always going to be the prettiest footballer on the ball, but Jorginho does what Jorginho does best, which is almost architect or orchestrate that midfield and tell him what to do and what not to do. But the name that we've been holding back on, I've been not saying anything. I waited for you to talk, and maybe you need to talk about the number 9, Big Rom. Look who's back.
He is, and it's so fulfilling to watch a Chelsea team, especially this Chelsea team that we've seen for the last season's 4 months, with a central attacking, striking, whatever you want to call it, forward that is just there to occupy defenders and open up space for the likes of Havertz, Mount, Reece James, Alonso. And you could see how worried the Arsenal defense was by just Lukaku, because every time we played the ball into him, they kind of all came in towards him, which left the wings open. And we'll talk about the goals, but it was just a great sight for me because we've spent the whole of last season saying, oh, we don't score enough, or we don't have this main threat, and now we do.
You know what's interesting, Roland, and I want you to talk about the goals here in just a minute, but I think that as the team gets comfortable with Lukaku leading the line, we're going to see bigger score lines. And I think I texted you during the match, and for anybody listening, Raul and I exchanged a lot of messages over the match because we live so many thousands of miles apart. That's the only way for us to discuss the game without being on the phone call interrupting each other. But essentially what I said was Kai Havertz and Mason Mount were a little bit shocked or stunned because they're so used to having maybe a Timo or Kai or Pulisic leading the line where it's very fluid. And so you'll see Kai take the number 9 or Mason take the number 9 or Timo take the number 9, and they're kind of floating around. But Lukaku just holds that middle, and he has a presence saying, I'm going to play through the middle. I'm here. I'm owning this space. And so Mason and Kai were kind of like trying to figure out if they need to take the middle, but it's not necessary anymore. Let him occupy the 2-3 center backs in Arsenal's case, occupy them, and you guys have a lot of room to operate around them or through the channels, and you're going to get a lot of chances with that gentleman in the front.
And you are, and let's just get into the first goal, which is he drops deep, kind of plays a pass, and then immediately he knows the ball's at Reece, it's going to fall to Reece James. I've got to get into the box. And I'm not going to like call out names of former strikers or current strikers in their squad, but that's the difference between having Lukaku and having someone else leading the line, where he has that sixth sense or that natural ability to say, I'm going to attack the box, versus someone else who will make that play and then kind of hold back and say, I'm going to wait for this cross to come back deeper or lower to me instead of going right into the box. And Lukaku attacks it, blows Murray off. And it's basically a tap-in. And now, again, rival fans will say, oh, everyone's getting carried away by a tap-in. But it's the whole play that we're getting carried away with,
Right.
not just, with the one piece of putting the ball in the back of the net, which, again, certain strikers might have missed. And I texted you that saying, a different striker in a different position might have missed that. But Lukaku did it. And within 15 minutes of his debut, he's gotten the first goal, his second homecoming, his second debut for Chelsea, and his first goal.
Before we move on that conversation, I think you're going around some of the names you don't want to mention. And rightly so, I agree with you. I don't think we need to mention the names. But the reason we're tiptoeing around the names is there are some ugly scenes that came out of Stamford Bridge when players were training and someone actually was allowed to ask a question. Rather than asking the question, this fan went out to say, get Timo Werner out of the club. Very, very disrespectful. I think us as fans, it's okay to banter once in a while, and Rahul and I have been guilty of this, where we banter here and talk about our feelings about a fan, but you don't go directly to a stadium and insult a player that pulls on the Chelsea shirt every week and does what they need to, because I know for a fact that I'm not going to be able to put on a Chelsea shirt and run half as fast as Timo Werner can and do the work that he does. But very unfair, and I don't like to see those things. I think these discussions we have offline as a podcast is great, but going out and picking up a microphone is not fair at all for someone like Timo, who's put his heart and soul and is a Champions League winner at the end of the day. So think about that when you want to berate those players. But coming back to Lukaku, I think what was interesting was before he kicked the first ball in his second spell for Chelsea, he said, we are hunters. And what he did was he hunted that goal. And a lot of people don't understand that the strength, the mentality, and the foresight to just say, I'm getting in there to hunt and make sure that this ball goes in. If he gets us 20, 30 goals this season, we're going to be a different Chelsea. Again, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Things happen. But like you said, exciting to see a focal point in the middle there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the team itself, you could see, felt a little more comfortable. Now, I know you said Kai Havertz and Mount were trying to figure out with Lukaku there, but I think as the game went on, they knew we're in trouble with defending, pump it up to Lukaku.
Right.
Or, we need to play a few passes out and have someone hold it for us, give it to Lukaku. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be the outlet every time, because as we get, further into the season, teams are going to figure out how to stop or at least defend him a little bit better. But it's a great option to have, because then you have a Kai Havertz that could do something else, or Mason Mount, or Timo Werner, or Hakim Ziyech. The list goes on.
Right.
The point here is that Chelsea now have a squad and a team that have a lot of different dimensions to it with Lukaku in it.
Absolutely. I really do believe that other than the dimensions role, I think you said this a couple episodes ago, he's gone out and become a more complete player. He doesn't mind playing with his back to goal, where he can rotate and flip and turn on an acceleration and go. But there were many times where the ball would come into feet. He would hold it up and wait for Mason and Kai to catch up, wait for Alonso and Reece to catch up, and then he would lay it off. That's all he had to do. Hold it up till the team caught up, and then he would lay it off, and then he can spin and continue and look for another opportunity there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of feeds into the second goal, where he didn't really hold it off, but he knew or was aware when Alonso plays the ball into him from the left wing towards the edge of the Arsenal box, he lets it run. He knows that Mason Mount is going to be right behind me, or in a different case, Kai Havertz, and he lets it go, and the Arsenal defender falls for it, falls to Mason Mount, and everyone's kind of attracted towards Lukaku and has left Reece James wide open. And Reece James, to his credit, was absolutely on his game. He provided the assist for the first goal, which we didn't even really touch on, and then popped up with the second goal. And I mean, this picture right here is an iconic picture, because you can see him bleed blue, and the Arsenal fans are telling him exactly how they feel. And Reece James, like I've been saying for over a season now, he's coming into his own too with this team and this formation. And at the expense of getting carried away and kind of saying things that I may regret maybe in a couple of games, Chelsea looked good, and it was a satisfying victory all around.
Yeah, and before we move on to the next thing we want to talk about, Rahul, I want to touch on Arsenal, because I have been a Mikel Arteta fan. And what I mean by a Mikel Arteta fan, is I think that every coach deserves time to put their stamp on a team. And I think Arteta has now had a little over getting to 2 seasons at this point. And one thing that was evident, and you touched on it right there, was both goals came from the right-hand side for Chelsea. Reece James providing the cross for Lukaku to finish, and then Reece James himself in acres of space because everybody was attracted over to Lukaku to get that goal. And if you watch the game back to back, that first half, the right side, we dominated. Not saying that Alonso was weak. He was excellent on the left, but that right side had a lot of possession, a lot of domination, a lot of balls coming in. And now getting back to Arteta, this is where, as a coach, you make and break yourself. You've been there a few seasons. You've got a core group of players you like. You're signing a couple of players. You spent 150 odd million this transfer window, and maybe not in the right positions. But tactically, I feel like he may have got it wrong, because even after the first goal got in, there was no changes tactically. Again, not talking about personnel, to maybe ask Tierney to sit back because Reece was free all game long. So it's going to be interesting for Arteta. I know that Alex was a big proprietor of him getting sacked before Christmas. And if things don't shape up, they have a tough run of games coming. And you and I sit on this podcast and criticize Arsenal, and they go on and get on a 10-game winning streak. So I'm not getting too deep into that, but he needs to correct some things before it gets too late.
No, you're spot on. And you watch Arsenal, and it wasn't just our game, the Brentford game too. They seem to not know what each other or what the team's supposed to be doing. They did improve in the second half against us, and you've got to say that's kind of a natural reaction from 11 professionals and a manager who's a professional manager. But you got to also worry about them if you're a fan, that Man City next, like you said, another tough fixture. And then they have a couple of other fixtures I don't remember off the top of my head against teams that they should be beating, but they should have been beating Brentford too, against no disrespect to Brentford. But this team just seems to be lacking ideas, and I think they're not playing the way or to the potential they should be. And from what I've read, Arteta has 5 games to save his job. And if he doesn't, then the next international break in October, I believe, is when they'll make the decision. But for Arsenal, you just, like you said, spent 150 million, and you're telling your manager, well, 5 games, and then we've got to find someone else. Like, it doesn't make sense. The decision making, we were talking about Newcastle earlier. Arsenal's decision making doesn't seem to be making a lot of sense either. And it'll be interesting to see it unfold over the next few weeks. I beg your pardon, but I'm happy we finally beat them and have broken that 3-game curse, which was, we just always faced them and they turned into a whole different team, and we put that to bed, and thanks to Lukaku.
There you go. So that's going to be exciting. But at the risk of praising Chelsea too much, we have another huge game coming up now, and that's against Liverpool.
Yes, and that's second versus third, because West Ham's at top. And it's a second versus third on Saturday afternoon. And hey, the big games keep coming for Chelsea, and I don't know if it's a good time to be playing Liverpool or a bad time, but fans will be back at Anfield. And like I mentioned earlier, Van Dijk is back, and Robertson should be back, who's missed a couple of games from injury. And their attacking lineup seems to be doing well, with Jota scoring in the last 2 games. So it's going to be a little more challenging for the first 2 games we've had. But it's a challenge that, at this point of the season is one that we should be looking forward to, because we're, as a team and as Chelsea, full of confidence.
It hurts me to hear you say Jota is doing well, because last season he helped my fantasy Premier League extremely to get me up to the top. And this season sounds like you've plucked him.
I did.
No, credit to Jota. I think last season he was really a diamond in the rough, maybe because he was performing really well at Wolves, and Liverpool paid a good amount of money for him. I think he was, in comparison to what we paid for Timo Werner, and there was a lot of back and forth of who got the better signing. And I don't think they got the better signing necessarily, but I do think they got the signing that fit what they needed.
Right.
When they were missing Firmino. I think he's a player that can fill in that role, or he's a player that we talked about with Will a few episodes ago that can play that attacking midfield position as well. So he's definitely one to watch. I think this is a different Liverpool, Rahul. I think last year they really, really struggled with injuries, not just center backs. I know people like to highlight center backs, but they had terrible injuries all across the board last year. I'm a little concerned that they've not staffed adequately to replace those people. Yes, they went out and spent money to get Ibrahim Konate, if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
Konate, but they've not got other players or a good depth of squad like a Man United does, like multiple center backs in different positions, multiple right backs, multiple strikers. You can see they've got additional players to cover. there's where Liverpool falls short. However, on the day, with all their players fit, they have a terrific squad, and it's going to be a very, very tough match. Maybe you can give us a starting 11 to go off with first.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a tough match, and I think the fact that we beat them their last season, obviously no fans, but a different ball game this time around with, fans being back and them feeling that last season we kind of robbed or took the win. I think they'll be a little more motivated, and to that point, I think we'll have to put out a side that can at times hold off and have the character to deal with the pressure that comes of playing at Anfield. So Mendy obviously in goal. I think as for Laqueta, Christensen, Rudiger keep their spot. Reece James, I believe, has to keep his spot. I think Conte comes back into this one, and I was between Jorginho and Kovacic. I went with Jorginho simply because I think Tuchel prefers to have that kind of one energetic midfielder, box to box kind of in Conte and Kovacic, and another in Jorginho that can just stay and kind of dictate tempo. So those two, I think Ben Chilwell does come back for this game. No disrespect to Alonso, but I think it's just a game where we'll need a little bit more energy going back and forward. And then Havertz and I think Mount and Lukaku keep their spot.
Yeah, fair enough. Again, I think the Chelsea squad has really improved, especially we're looking at people like Havertz, Werner, Hakim Ziyech, who last season were not at their best. I think this season we might see them step up a level. I, for one, can't argue too much with the squad, but I would like to see maybe Timo Werner come on in that second half, especially when there's tired legs out there, or maybe even Hakim Ziyech to create a little bit more. I think we were screaming for him in that last game against Arsenal towards the second half where we went kind of flat. But I think Conte will make a big, big difference in the midfield, especially when you've got the likes of Salah, Mane running off of the midfield, trying to get behind our defenders. I think he's going to make a huge difference in the squad. So no disagreements here. I think that's a good starting lineup. Maybe a prediction from you, because it's a tough game to predict.
It is a tough game, and it's going to be interesting to see. So now we saw Lukaku against an average Arsenal defense. Now he comes up against Van Dijk, who really a season ago was the best defender in the world. It's going to be interesting to see how Liverpool defend him and how he reacts to being against one of the better defenders in the league. I think it'll end in as a draw, which early season not a bad result going away to Anfield for either, at least for us, and for Liverpool. They kind of continue their unbeaten streak and go into the rest of the season without having that early loss. So I think 1-1, okay. But I could see us maybe nicking it 2-1 too.
Okay, fair enough. I'm actually going to go for a 2-1. I think that with Lukaku, that he can keep Van Dijk occupied enough, and his partner Joel Matip tends to slip up every now and then, which is why they went out and bought Ibrahim Konate. I hope I'm saying the name correctly this time. Giving a little bit of room of the likes of Mason, Kai Havertz, maybe even Ben Chilwell to get a goal. He does like to bomb forward and sneak in at that far post. So the problem with the 2-1 is I think Salah likes to always get a goal against Chelsea just to rub it in that he's left us. So I'm going with 2-1 over there.
Yeah, a tight game, as you can tell by both predictions. But hey, it's another big game for Chelsea, and this is what you want early season, is have these big games and kind of get them out of the system while teams are still trying to figure out their tactics and kind of just working their way back into fitness. So I'm excited. It should be a good game, and we'll kind of do the build up to the game on Instagram as we have been doing for some of the other games. And before we wrap this up, I just have a shout out to give to Dundilla. We've been saying if you leave us an Apple review, we'll give you a shout out. So here is his shout out. He left us a very kind and nice Apple podcast review. I beg your pardon. So thank you so much, Dundilla. And for our other listeners, if you're listening on Apple, please do leave us a review. It helps us kind of grow and find other listeners like yourself. But before we wrap it up, Jackie, any parting thoughts from you?
Look, it's been a strong week so far. It's been exciting. Chelsea is sitting up there and about at the top of the Premier League table. Early days, not too much to be too excited about, but what I'm seeing is making me excited. So gung-ho towards Liverpool, and hopefully we can get that win.
Keeping our fingers crossed. But that wraps it up. Thank you very much for listening. Please continue to subscribe, like, and follow us. It's at the Premier Chels on Apple, Spotify, Google, and Instagram. And on Twitter, it's at Premier Chels. Please also follow Christian, who just joined us for the earlier part of the show. He's at Kickoff Coffee Co. on Instagram. And do check out their website as well, kickoffcoffeeco.com. And use our code TPCoffee15 to buy yourself one of the delicious coffee bags that they have on there. But we will be back later this week to do a Liverpool review and an Aston Villa preview. But until then, stay safe and up the Chels.